Congress has released a shocking letter, allegedly signed by Donald Trump inside Jeffrey Epstein's infamous birthday book. Trump calls it fake, but the handwriting experts disagree, and now there's a $10 billion lawsuit. So what does this mean for his credibility in the 2026 election cycle? That you want to know, that you want to understand. The second thing we're going to talk a look at is the Putin stock warning. Basically, Vladimir Putin has declared that any European or Western troops entering Ukraine during the fighting would be a legitimate target. Europe wants a post-war security force, but Putin just raised the stake for escalation. That is also very important. The third thing is you have lumber prices that are collapsing. Yep. Wall Street Journal, lumber prices are plunging, down more than 20% in a month. Obviously, housing demand is cooling, tariffs are fueling chaos. Now, obviously, what's happening is if lumber prices are dropping and you need lumber to build houses and major items, so that's an inclination that you might have recession in the works. And then, of course, you have the EU-US trade deal under threat. Remember that 15% for the Europeans? Well, it would appear that they're getting a little upset about the fact that security tariffs are being applied to the 15%. And what does that mean? Well, across the Atlantic, the $600 billion EU-US trade truce is unraveling. New U.S. security tariffs on steel, machinery, and more have Europe furious, with business already halting exports. The fragile deal may be collapsing just weeks after it was signed. So we got these four things going on today, and I'll tell you, it's quite interesting. Well, first of all, let's talk about Trump. Let's talk about that letter. Let's talk about the fact that right now what's happening is the MAGA situation is unraveling slowly but surely. And this is a big strength behind what's important to the current administration. Now, how do we get there? Well, first, the administration promised that they were going to tell you everything there was to know about Epstein. And then they said there was nothing, there was no there. And then they said, let's forget about it. But unfortunately, within the MAGA movement, we're talking about within the MAGA movement, they're saying, no, we want to know. And that's the break. You got Massey, you've got Taylor Green, MAGA people. Taylor Green is definitely a MAGA person over on Capitol Hill. And she basically says, well, I think that Trump should meet with the victims, and we need to release even more information, because a lot of information was released. You wanted information? I'm giving you information. So a lot of information was released, but unfortunately, when you look at the information, it's just the stuff that everyone was aware of. There was nothing new there. So what they're saying basically is we need to want to know more information. Then of course they brought that lady out, and Ghislaine Maxwell, but frankly, all she said was, nothing happened. I don't understand what this big deal about. I was wrongfully accused and imprisoned. I didn't do anything. I was just helping him out. And Trump didn't do anything. And I didn't do anything. Even Prince Charles didn't do anything. It was a big coercion on everything that you thought. So everyone says, okay, so nothing happened. So she basically lied during the 9 hours. She spoke for 9 hours. She spoke during 9 hours in August, and frankly, or in July actually, and there was nothing to be said there. But she did get a good deal for herself, because she ended up going to a better jail. So, right? So what? So, and in fact, when I did the live at that time, I said, well, but there's nothing there. And then everybody starts saying the same thing, that, well, you're really seeing, and they released 30,000 pages recently. I took a look at them. Most of it is known already, right? There's a video of the house, there's a bunch of pictures and everything else, but there's nothing very relevant, and it's for public information. You could yourself take a look at it, and you realize there's nothing new. And then again, the MAGA people are saying, but how could that be? Out of all the things that happened, all the people, all the money, all the victims, you mean nothing happened, and one guy died and one went to jail, and that's it? That cannot be. Right? They cannot be. I mean, after all, Epstein, for example, was managing money, quote unquote, for the head of Apollo, a big private equity firm, and he was giving $30 million loan, which was forgiven. He was giving he was giving $50 million or so for payment services rendered, and his board told him, but what did he do for you to deserve that kind of money? And the guy at Apollo basically said, well, I'm a billionaire, so he helped me save money. He's pretty good at what he's doing, and I paid him. And this is kind of what Maxwell said when she has a deposition. She basically said that, you know what? Yes, he gave me $30 million, but it was for services rendered again. I was managing his money. I was helping him out. Well, she wasn't managing his money. It was a loan from him to do her own business, his own business. And then she made money. And why you want to blame the woman for that? Okay, so one big misunderstanding after the other. You may believe it, you may not believe it, but the point is the MAGA people do not believe it, and they're saying we want even more information released. So basically, you got two camps, right? You got the administration that's saying enough of this. We're releasing a lot of information. You are playing the games of the Democrats that basically wants to keep this thing alive. And obviously today the Democrats made even more alive because Congress released a shocking letter allegedly signed by Donald Trump, showing the infamous birthday, the birthday letter that supposedly Trump wrote. And he's saying that's exactly what I want this thing to go to bed, because you keep feeding into it, you keep listening to it, and we're not focusing on what needs to be done. And obviously on the other side, they're saying, aha, so you have something to hide. That is a reason why you don't want to talk about it. So here's the camp, folks. That's the camp that you have. Either you believe in it or you don't believe in it, right? And frankly, at this point, but the thing is, even people within the Republican side are saying, well, hold on a second. There's nothing there. Come on. We need to see more. I know you didn't do anything, so let it be. He says, well, the more I let it be, the more they want. And the more they want, the more they talk, and it's a distraction. Yeah, but the more you're saying no, it looks worse and worse for us. So we have to release it. It's a very interesting dilemma. So basically, the news is House Democrats have publicly released a suggestive birthday letter allegedly sent by Donald Trump. Right? The note basically was part of a birthday book compiled by Ghislaine Maxwell for Epstein in the 50th birthday. When they asked her, she said, I don't remember who I put in and who I didn't put in, frankly, at that time. So she doesn't remember. Now, obviously, Trump has denied handwriting or sketching the letter, and he's suing the Wall Street Journal. And obviously, depending which side you're on, right, obviously you're going to jump on that story. You're going to say, aha, you see, I told you he was guilty. So this broader scrutiny as the Justice Department began releasing more Epstein-related documents, such as the birthday album, his will, financial records, legal agreements, in response to bipartisan pressure from Congress. So that thing is getting out of control. And you have to be careful. You have to be very careful, because here's the thing. Don't forget, Taylor Greene and Massey especially is under a tremendous amount of pressure. He's a Republican, and he wants everything to be released. And for that to happen, you need almost 200 plus Democrats to agree, and at least 6 Republicans. He's got 4 already, meaning release even more information, everything. They want to see everything. Can you get everything? Let's see. Let's see if you can get everything. But you need 6 Republicans. Right now, only 4 so far. And the administration is pressuring the Republicans not to release any more information, because then it creates even more chaos. I mean, that's their surrounding. But they put themselves in a situation where they say, I don't want to release. Now you're starting to look guilty. And you don't want that. So now, obviously, if you're a Republican, do you want to go on that boat? Do you want to go on that bandwagon? Okay? Because if it's You don't know where it's going to end up. So do you want to ride that boat? And some of them are saying, well, I don't really want to ride the boat. I'd rather say, let's release information. That's all. We have nothing to hide, right? So let's release information. And some of them are saying, well, I mean, the midterms are coming. And don't forget, the midterms are coming. The entire House up for grabs, and the third of the Senate as well. So, Trump could become a lame duck president if this thing goes sideways and the Democrats are able to use it to their advantage. So let's watch out for that. And that's what it matters. It matters because it confirms detail first reported in July by the Wall Street Journal. They're saying, here's the letter, folks. You thought we were lying when we told you about that letter and we're being sued by Trump? This is the letter. This is what's happening. We are telling you exactly what is happening. So we shall see what happened. We need to see more, right? There was a forceful denial paired with legal action, underscores how seriously he is defending the narrative. And unfortunately for investigators in Congress, this adds momentum towards full transparency and release of the remaining files. There's too many questions. The second thing you need to know is lumber prices are down. What do I care? Well, you care. You should care very much because lumber prices go into corrugated boxes, sheets and packaging, all these things and houses. So if that goes down, that's not good. U.S. lumber prices have plunged by approximately 23 to 25% since early August, marking a sharp downturn from recent highs. Usually when that starts to slow down, it's a sign of a recession. And if you have a recession, that could impact stock markets. The slide has triggered alarm in financial circles as lumber often acts as a forward-looking indicator for the broader economy. Are we slowing down? And the reason that happened is because you have a supply surplus. What happened is, in anticipating the famous tariffs, the lumber people basically, bought more lumber, right? So in case they get hit with prices, especially coming from Canada. And at the same time, that's flooded the market. At the same time, declines in building permits and overall construction activity are weakening demand. So threats of new national security tariffs and existing duty in Canada imports are creating market instability. You have leading producers like Interfor and Domtar have announced production cutbacks, reducing mill operations to align with demand. So if you're in that field, that's going to be tough for you because they're slowing down. While these measures offered brief price support, the market has resumed the downward trend. Not saying that it's going to be a recession. All we're saying is that lumber pricing are falling fast, which is an indication that the economy might be slowing at some point. As of September 8, lumber futures are trading at roughly $525 per thousand board. So that's a decline of 17% over the past month. Right? This sustained drop has raised concern. 17%. Lumber prices are expressing a shift and steep decline due to oversupply. Now, lots of mixed signals. That's why I want you to listen to this channel. That's why I want you to join, because I want you to make sure you follow up what's going on, because, lots of news, lots of information, lots of biased information mostly. And the Black Swan is all about finding out what are the items that are going to be impacting the market and the economy like a black swan. Because a black swan, we're saying, there's no such thing as a black swan. There's a bunch of white swan. Well, actually, yeah, there are black swans. They're found in Australia. And for the longest time, they didn't know. So this is exactly what's happening here. Where's a black swan here? Is this thing with the letter and the Epstein, is that a black swan? Is it going to go away? Meaning that they're going to realize there's nothing. Okay, you got everything. Move away. Nothing to be done. Let's move on. Or there is something, and it's impacting the current administration ability to get the things done that they want to get done. That's a possibility as well. So that's a black swan, because I'm telling you right now, if the administration is bogged down with this thing and it start impacting the election, the midterm election, we're off to the races. We are off to the races because now the Democrats, which are basically waiting. In fact, there was an article in the Financial Times recently that talks about that the Democrats should not take advantage of the current government's failure. Basically, they don't deserve it. I guess that's what they're saying. But the point is that could be an issue. The lumber prices. Well, the lumber prices. Basically, we're saying recession here. Now, of course, there's several things that doesn't point. I could say, for example, that we have lots of money being spent on capital expenditures right now. So I don't think it's such a bad thing. There's a lot of good things that you could point to towards whether or not the economy is actually going down. I will do a live, especially on what happened on Friday with the earnings and more importantly, what happened with the employment. But earnings are up, capex is up. Yeah, I mean, I know some people, there's less jobs, but it doesn't mean everything is going down the toilet either. So we need to analyze the situation. We need to understand what's happening. That's more important. Speaking of which, okay, the next thing is you got Putin. What about him? Well, actually, he was speaking very recently, and Putin issued a strong warning to any Western troops deployed in Ukraine, particularly while fighting continues. It would be regarded by Russia as a legitimate target. What is he talking about? Well, what's happening is, as you remember, that the administration right now is talking about offering those security guarantees to Ukraine so that there's a peace treaty and they'll take care of the border basically between Russia and Ukraine, and they'll have security guarantees. And then Europeans came to the United States, and you see them sitting around the office of the president and basically saying, well, let's work together. And obviously the U.S. administration said, sure, let's work together, let's do it. So we'll offer security guarantee. Right, okay, so you offer the security guarantee and we'll put some troops in the middle and that will take care of it. And yes, Russia wants land, period. The thing is, what do they really want? And they said, and Russia basically said, whoa, wait a second, what are you doing? Are you doing anything? Well, nothing was really concrete. It was just talks. But then, last week, the Europeans decided they got together, all 26 of them, well, there's more than 26, but 26 of them said, yes, if we have a peace treaty and we have also the U.S. guarantee, right, support, then we will bring troops in the middle. So this is getting real, right? And Putin is not backing down. That's true too, right? This is real, John Fairchild said. So basically, they are going to be in the middle as long as the thing is, Europeans say, yeah, okay, we got to agree. Okay, we're ready to go whenever we have a peace treaty. Or maybe without a peace treaty. Okay, we'll see. Because Europeans now, they need to do something. They need to, and in fact, in my one of my for my members, I gave you a list of some of the defense stocks, because obviously defense stocks in Europe are going up quite a bit because they're spending money over there. They're spending big money because they're catching up. But they're catching up. And now they're saying we're going to put armies in the middle. And the thing is, we haven't heard too much from the U.S. administration suddenly. They're saying, okay, well, let's talk about this. Well, we're ready to go, so give us a guarantee. The U.S. hasn't been very clear about the guarantee. And this is where this thing ties back up to Epstein. Why? Well, because, believe it or not, the MAGA people do not, well, they want to know what's going on with Epstein, so we know that by now. But they also do not want the U.S. to get involved in another war. So I guess they're asking, what do you mean when you say you're going to offer security guarantees to Ukraine? No troops on the ground. Fine. But what do you mean by that? You're going to fly over with a B-52 bomber? You're going to provide satellite imagery? What are you going to do without involving the U.S., which I think is very hard to do, obviously. I mean, some U.S. soldiers are going to have to be involved at some level to protect, to offer that guarantee, because the Europeans say, no, but I want you to say it first. So what Putin is saying, and he's very clear, he said any Western troops deployed to Ukraine, particularly but even when there's no fighting, while fighting continue, would be regarded by Russia as a legitimate target. And you got to take this very carefully. Why? They're afraid of Putin. I mean, he's been fighting for 3 years. He's got a war economy. He's got, and I'm not saying it. Take a look at it. The NATO, the NATO secretary himself said, we got to catch up to Russia because they are outspending us with in terms of, it's a war economy. We're not nowhere there. Maybe we could put 20,000 soldiers. Maybe that's not going to make a difference. And if you get bombed, what are you going to do? And if we get attacked with drones, Europe has no ability to protect itself. You have to realize these are the facts. Europe has no ability to protect itself against Russia. So before you put your 26 soldiers in the middle between Ukraine and Russia, be careful, because it could happen. Of course, they won't do it unless the U.S. provide some security guarantee of their own, which whatever that means, without upsetting the MAGA people, which are already pissed off as it is with the Epstein story. And they were very upset, I remind you, when the U.S. administration decided to attack Iran, although it kind of went away and it disappeared and it was done. They don't like that. There's several things they don't like. So I think at the end of the day, the point I want to make is I feel that there's a crack within the MAGA movement towards the administration. And be careful, because you need them to get reelected. Otherwise, they're going to be disappointed. Not that they're going to vote for the Democrats, but they just won't vote. They're going to be, come on, it was just the same thing as before. Very, very disappointing. And that is why you need to worry about these events, because frankly, at the end of the day, that could have an implication. That could have a great implication as to what is going on everywhere, right? Why do I say that? Well, because these are events, frankly, that are impactful. These are events that you should care about. And then, of course, speaking of Europe, and that's one doozy. Remember, there was a $600 billion deal done between the U.S. and Europe, where they would basically invest in the U.S., although there's some questions as to exactly what was meant by that and how much they would actually do, meaning 600 billion what? You're going to send us cash and then we get to invest in the US? How do we do that? How do we manage that situation? And basically what they said was, what we're going to do is we're going to go to private companies in Europe and they are going to invest in the US. Although technically when van der Leyen made that agreement, she really didn't have the ability, Michael, they did not have the ability to actually do it. And hello, Yenny. And so they don't have the ability to do it. What does that mean? Well, that means that maybe you don't have 600 billion. Okay, fine. Let's assume we have the 600 billion. That's not the point here. The point is that at the same time, they got 15%. Great. What's happening is, because there are new U.S. security tariffs on steel machinery, and more Europe have Europe furious. Well, what does that mean? Well, what's happening is, you know that the Court of Appeals basically said that the emergency tariffs, because there's three kind of tariffs, there's the emergency and the security tariffs, and then the third kind of tariffs. But the security, the emergency tariffs, basically the Court of Appeals has said they are illegal. Okay. So that means now it's going to the Supreme Court. And my guess is the Supreme Court is also going to say these are illegal tariffs, because it gives too much power to the president, and they don't like that. Even though they are very conservative, even then they are elected, but they were put in by the Republicans. They don't like it. Okay. So what the administration is doing, and that's why I know that it's not going to work out with the Supreme Court is going to say no, is the administration is already shifting. So they're shifting to the security tariffs. It's important because now, and that the Supreme Court can't do anything about that. Right? They cannot stop the security tariffs. And security tariffs mean that, well, I'm concerned about the security of my country. I'm in charge of the country. I'm the executive power. Therefore, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tax steel, semiconductor, pharmaceutical items, anything that I think that will help protect my country. That is what it is. So after they signed the deal with the Europeans, they're now saying that, but we need to apply some tariffs, security tariffs, in addition to that. So originally in July, the U.S. and EU struck a major deal in Scotland, where the U.S. agreed to impose a 15% tariff on most European goods, down from 30%. The agreement significantly planned U.S. investment in the U.S. and increased U.S. energy sales to Europe. So basically, there was 600 billion investment, and then they said they were going to invest 750. They would buy 750 billion of energy from the U.S. That was major. It's almost $1 trillion. But however, sensitive sectors like steel and aluminum remain under steep U.S. tariffs at 50%. And what I think is happening is the expanded scope of these tariffs have rattled European exporters. For instance, Kron Group, a German manufacturer, has halted U.S. export due to steep 50% tariffs. But hold on, I thought we had a deal. Well, you had a deal, except that the U.S. has layered a new set of tariffs on top of the existing tariffs. And they're sectoral tariffs and target key European industries, undermining the stability of the prior agreement. So these new tariffs are being applied to area critical to national security, such as steel, aluminum, machinery, and motors. The expanded scope of these tariffs has rattled European importers. And for example, Kron Group, like I said, is basically saying, 50% tariff, forget it. The uncertainty has raised alarm among EU policymakers and industry leaders, with growing call to revisiting or amending the original deal. You say, but hold on, I thought we had a deal, and now you're telling me that we don't have a deal. Or we have a deal, but now you're charging us 50% tariffs for steel. And so it's very unsettling. And this is important. This is important because now they're asking well, I don't think it's going to work, but the U.S., the steel exporters from Europe are saying 50%, that's killing us. We can't do it. We need help. So the political response has been that EU trade leaders are expressing doubt Parliament may push for deal revision. The July trade deal offered are not escalating as security-driven tariffs threatens to erode the value and predictability. You see, what are you doing? Right? What are you doing? You're going after different type of tariffs. So here we are, folks. So we have 4 stories, right? 4 stories, and important stories, I have to say. The first one is obviously the Trump letter, right? Obviously, we have the lumber prices here that are falling fast, and as the lumber prices are falling, we are having concern about the recession. The House Democrats have released Trump's alleged birthday letter to Epstein. Trump denies, calls it a fake. Lawsuit follows. Yeah. The thing is, Trump was elected to find out exactly what's going on. And the less you talk about it, the worse it gets. The more you're trying to squash it, the worse it gets. And nothing to do if he's guilty or not guilty. Don't forget, you will never know that. That you will never know. Nobody's going to jail. They're not going to put him to jail. They're not going to even forget him. I mean, don't forget, they're going to have like a bunch of people coming to Congress very soon. In fact, they started behind closed doors, I might say, except for one guy. But most of them are going to be behind closed doors, and you're not going to know exactly what is going on. They're not going to tell you because it's closed doors, except for the former secretary, what's his name, the guy that basically said that we should, he's the one that freed originally Acosta, okay? And he's the one in 12 years ago basically let Epstein off the hook when he had his first intercation with the law, and said that, okay, you do 1 year of something very, very, very minimal kind of time, and you would also we would also forgive co-conspirators, and although the co-conspirators were never mentioned. I said, what kind of deal is this? So now they want to bring him back, Acosta. He's over at Newsmax now, I believe. They want to bring him back, and no, not Newsmax, some other Republican-led outfit. But the point is, they want him to come up, and that's going to be public. So that should be interesting to see. Why did you let them go? Who were these co-conspirators that we never heard of? What happened? But at the same time, you really want to know what's going on, right? Because now it's becoming an issue. Because it's becoming an issue because we keep talking and talking more and more and more about it. And it's not going away. And the more we talk about it, and the closer you get to the midterms, you still have time, but it needs to go to bed. And the way it goes to bed, it should release everything. And Massey, another Republican, not a Democrat, Massey, who's been a problem for Trump for a while, he wants everything to be released. So they're putting together, and Taylor Greene has joined them. This is not Democrats. This is within Republican. There's a crack going on here. He wants it to be released. He wants everything to come out. And for you to do that, you need most of Congress to agree. I mean, obviously, all the Democrats say, sure, why not? But you also need some Republicans as well. And he hasn't found enough Republicans because the White House is basically pressuring other Republicans not to release any more information. Is that really a good strategy? It is not working. Okay. In fact, Taylor Greene came out recently and said, no, I'm still a great friend with the president. You know, I called him Thursday, although it seems to be a bit frosty towards her now. But the thing is, he's frosty towards Taylor Greene, which was a very, very, very strong MAGA person. You know, you're eating your young here. Be careful. And if the administration loses the MAGA movement, they will not come out and vote coming November. And that's all the Democrats are waiting for, to take over the House. And if they take over the House, it's over. Right? Each time you want to do something, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. Then all the efforts drops. That cannot be good. That cannot be good, right? Because then if you're trying to do something, you can't get it done. Now, of course, you may agree or not agree if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but then nothing is done. And the fact is that the U.S. has a trade deficit, huge trade deficit with lots of countries, and that needs to be fixed. And it's not just the U.S. because it's the U.S. You know, India has a huge trade deficit with China, and they said they want to reduce it. Right? It's not good to have a huge trade deficit because you don't make the stuff anymore. No, if it's a bunch of shoes and t-shirts, one thing, but when it comes to pharmaceutical, when it comes to a bunch of very important things, pharmaceutical, semiconductor, rare earth minerals, you need to get these things done, because if you don't get these things done, that's going to be a problem with the labor supplies. It's going to impact all of people in the U.S. And it's not just the U.S., because if the U.S. loses, right, loses that balancing power that it has, then the world becomes imbalanced. Have you seen Russia, India, and China together meeting, talking, with the weapons and the tanks and all that? U.S. is desperately trying to keep India, which is a democracy, as opposed to Russia and China, as part of the Quad group. The Quad: Australia, U.S., India, and Japan. Trying to do this Quad group versus the BRICS group, right? Quad versus BRICS. That's what's happening here. But unfortunately, I guess people say, well, because you were mean to Modi, and so you lost Modi, and Modi went to China. Well, it's not that simple as that, right? It's not as simple as that, because quite frankly, Modi and China had been talking for some time, since the beginning, since last year. So it's not as simple as that. But the point is, the U.S. is trying to keep itself relevant in this game that is moving very fast. And the last thing you want is this Epstein. Now, you could understand if you're sitting on your desk at the Oval Office, say, why do we have to keep talking about this guy? Nothing happened. We're wasting time. Yeah, I know, but that's politics. And you cannot, the more you're shoving it away, again, no one is going to go to jail for this thing. Even the people that are going to Congress, they're going to be, Bill Clinton. Don't think for 1 second these people are going to go to jail. Whatever, if they did something, they didn't do anything. And that's why basically, and he knows that, and I know that, and now you know that, they basically say, what are we doing? You're sucking the air out of the room. That's what you're doing here. So stop talking about it. But unfortunately, this doesn't work, because then they twist it around by saying, well, then you have something to hide. No, I don't, but I don't want to talk about it. Well, then let's let it happen. Then oh my God, if we're going to release everything, it's going to go on. All those meetings that are, all these people, all the Clintons are coming to Congress, and Comey, and all of the former AGs are going to be coming to Congress. What do you think is going to happen? So all through October, that's all we're going to talk about. Oh, of course, these are closed. All of them are closed. You won't get to hear from them. So that makes it even worse, because then, so what's going on? Do we know what's happening? I guess you're going to hear reports, and it's going to come out. But the point, so October is shot. Now, if you release even more information now, November, December is going to be shot as well. Hey, we're approaching 2026 already. Is that what we want to talk about? And the administration also has to deal with lots of things, which includes what's going on with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court itself is going to be a doozy. And then you're not going to hear from the Supreme Court at least until, maybe mid-2026. And of course, that's a problem for the administration, because they cannot deal effectively with the tariffs. Because you say, are we talking to the right people here? I mean, you're going to court, so that's one thing. And obviously, the in terms of the economy, and we released some pretty bad numbers in terms of the employment. Now, keep in mind, right, that even though employments were not that good very recently on Friday, it doesn't mean that we have a recession. Keep in mind that the earnings of the companies at the S&P 500 are doing well. There's a tremendous amount of capex going on in the country in terms of data center, in terms of AI, right? So be careful you don't. The numbers are horrible, and the employment is dropping, and we're going into recession. Well, let's see. Don't forget, we're going to have rate cuts, definitely happening right now. I mean, in September, 25 basis points, maybe 50. We shall see. That should be interesting. So things are happening. Don't, and that's why you have this channel, and that's why I want you to join the channel, because I want you to get a feel as to what's going on. I mean, what do we have? Do we have a recession, or we're gonna have inflation? We shall see. You have to look at this every day. You have to munch it a little bit every day to figure out what's going on, because it is not that obvious. It is not that obvious. But the numbers, unfortunately, were low on Friday employment. In fact, the revised number for June were negative. So there was negative job creation in June. And the lumber prices, as I mentioned about today, lumber prices actually went down quite a bit. And the reason they went quite a bit is because the lumber, the Domtar, for example, when we say lumber prices, we're not talking about a piece of wood, but we're talking about corrugated board. We're talking about paper board. Anything that goes into packaging. Those Amazon things that you're receiving. So that's correlated to the industry. We're talking about the wood, the that goes into houses. So that's it's the cyclical stuff, right? So when the cyclical stuff is going down, that means that usually is a recession coming up or slow down. Now maybe as to that end, the administration was correct in saying too late, Powell. Well, we should have lowered the rates way before, and we haven't. And now look what it is. Didn't I ask you to lower the rates? And Powell basically saying, no, but I'm looking at the numbers, and the employment are pretty good. Well, guess what? The employment numbers went from we need to drill John says we need to drill 4,000 oil wells to bring economy up. Everything depends on oil. Well, I mean, although right now, because oil is going down, some of these companies are getting hurt, unfortunately. And oil also is highly correlated to the economy as well. So you got to watch that thing as well. But at the same time, like I said, right now, earnings for public companies are up, doing great. I mean, mostly driven by the tech companies. Okay, fine. But a lot of money is being spent. I mean, we're going to get $600 billion from Europe, another $750 billion from Europe, another $550 from Japan. They want another $400 billion from Taiwan, and Apple is going to invest. So there's a lot of capex. The only thing is, it's not happening Monday morning. That's going to take a while to permeate. And back to what the administration is saying is, guys, I have a lot of work on my hands. I cannot spend my time talking about Epstein. You can understand that point of view as well. We've got, don't forget, right now, the Supreme Court is going to be looking at the tariffs, and they're not going to look at it Monday morning. They're going to take several months before they decide. Even though they're all been on the Republican side, my guess is they're going to say no, these tariffs are not legal. And if that happens, then of course all of the money that you were supposed to get and that you got already from the tariff, we're talking about $300-400 billion, right? But all that money that we got from them is going to be, you have to give it back. You have to give back $300 billion. And if you hear from them in March or in April or in May, now you got to give $500 billion back. And obviously that's going to be a huge issue, because that, I believe, that's a black swan right there. Be careful. And again, like I said, always, when you cross the street, you don't look where you're going, right? You're making sure you're not going to get run over. That's the first thing you do. So in your portfolio and your stock, what you want to make sure is that you want to make sure you understand what your portfolio is about. That is extremely important, and you have to protect what you have. Don't look for the next don't look for the next Nvidia, right? So they have to give that money back. That's a lot of damage if you have to give that money back, because now that money, where is the money going? Where is that money? Well, that money, my friends, that money is basically going to the Treasury. and that money that's going to the Treasury is going to help pay for that money is going to help pay for the debt. It's not a small amount. I mean, yes, I know that I'm talking about. I know I'm talking about 300 billion, but if the tariffs gets to stay, we're talking $2-3 trillion in tariffs. That's a tax. Again, not paid by international by the foreign countries. They paid by companies, but it's a tax, right? So the money is coming to the government, and it's going to be helpful. The problem is that if the money doesn't come in, that's going to impact the ability for the ability to maintain the trade deficit. Who caused it and why? Well, I mean, the U.S. caused it. Why? Because it decided to. First of all, let's make sure we understand each other. When I'm talking about trade deficit, I'm talking about trade deficit is really having to do with industrials, not services. The U.S. does not have a trade deficit with services. They have a trade deficit with industrial. I'm talking about semiconductor. We're talking about healthcare. We're talking about the rare earth minerals. That's what you have. Now that's only, and to be, let's be fair here, it's only 20%. It's only 20% of the economy and 10% of the stock market. So it's not like we're not making anything anymore. No, we're making lots of stuff. We're making mostly services, not stuff. And how did you create it? The same way India had created its own trade deficit with China. Well, you basically, did you want to dig for rare earth minerals? No, it was too polluting, right? You needed somebody to do it. Well, China said, I'll do it. I'll get dirty and spend 10, 12 years to start digging for rare earth minerals. You didn't want to do it. Well, they did it. But now they have control over 80% of all the rare earth minerals in the world. At least the production of it. You can't do without China. So they're sitting pretty and saying, okay, let's talk. And that's what they have 90 days discussion. So trade discussion with China and Europe, and the US. So how did that happen? Well, it happened in a very simple way. Is that you did not want to make anything. You wanted them to make it. And unfortunately, when you let somebody else do it, then they learn how to do it. You forget and they learn. Well, so why are they doing it for? Because they want your money. They want the dollar, and they have the dollar. And that's what happened. And that's where we are. Okay? So our 4 stories. EU trade deal hit by security tariffs. So basically, Europe is saying, well, maybe I shouldn't be paying the 15% anymore because now you're hitting me with security tariff 15% on steel. That wasn't part of the deal. Story number 2, lumber prices are falling fast, and they're falling, which is maybe an indication that the economy is slowing. Let's not get carried away. There's a few positive things happening in the economy right now, so it's not just all about that. Number 3, the House Democrats have released the Epstein letter again, and the administration is saying, I don't want to hear about this anymore, but they're saying, well, why, you have something to hide? This thing is not going away anytime soon. And number 4, Putin basically is warning Europe. He's saying, do not come between us and Ukraine. I got things to do. I got business to take care of. I am close to China. They're going to help me out. In fact, they just issued a bunch of bonds for him. So the world is getting more complicated, my friends. And let's keep up with the news and understand what's happening so we avoid any black swan. And don't forget to subscribe.